Are You Getting Dumber? Part 2. So, in part 1 of the series, we mainly focused on attention, how it's collapsing, being engineered away from us, the cognitive implications of the pandemic, of excessive screen use, of the mass digital integration into our world and lives. And we really delved into that topic of attention and focus. But today, we're going to be talking about memory. It's the same day. I just changed my shirt. I literally just recorded that episode. I didn't even bother changing anything else. Just my shirt. So, but it's for you. It's to give you the sense of separation between the two parts. So, you're welcome. Anyways, besides the point, today we're going to be talking about memory because a lot of people feel like they have gaps, huge gaps, where memories or full thoughts should be. I feel the same way. If you've ever looked back at the past like 6, 7 years of your life and realized that huge chunks of time are just missing from your memory, you're not alone. And it's not your fault. Your brain is reacting exactly how it should be to a world that is optimized for distraction. So, sit tight and welcome back to the second part of the series here on Ish Matters. We're going to be delving into all things memory and the biology behind it all. And so prove me wrong, prove yourself wrong, and try to sit through the whole episode without clicking out or speeding it up. Dr. Marianne Wolf, neuroscientist and author of Reader Come Here, talks about how reading, like really sitting down and reading, is one of the main ways humans are able to maintain and increase critical thinking skills. But our ability to read is drastically reduced nowadays. Actually, we see this in comprehension and reading scores in schools when it's measured all across the world. We are getting worse and worse at it. Why? Well, because when we get so used to scrolling and skimming, our brain gets used to scanning information rather than engaging with it deeply. Another reason for this is something called data deluge. Deluge? Data deluge. I'm going to call it that. No, it's definitely not deluge. Deluge? Data deluge. Yeah, there we go. Data deluge. When there's so much information and data, we don't know how to meaningfully interact with it. We talked about this in part 1 a little bit, how the paradox of plenty operates. When there's so much, nothing has value anymore. When everything is equally accessible, no one thing is prioritized. And that's pretty much what's happening with information nowadays. But there's another really big problem when it comes to this paradox of plenty or having too much information at our fingertips. I mean, outside of just being completely paralyzed by it. The problem is something called digital amnesia or transactive memory, both of which we are going to dive into. So, first and foremost, digital amnesia. So, you actually start to forget information that you know you can reliably outsource or get somewhere else. And this is because we have an app for literally everything nowadays. And even Google searches have become easier because you don't even need to click on the links anymore. You just get this like nice little AI generated snippet of information. But this is where also it combines with transactive memory, where your brain likes to outsource because it means it's more efficient, it's spending less energy. And our bodies strive for efficiency, really. And so if it knows it can get something from somewhere within seconds, reliably, quickly, and without fail, then it doesn't even bother encoding it in long term memory. So basically, when we're offloading this information or outsourcing it, we stop remembering the piece of information itself and we start remembering where we can find that information. But the problem with this is that pretty much everything can be found on our phones, in our pockets, within seconds. Phone numbers, birthday parties, random facts you learn to like show off as fun facts at a get together, everything. But the problem is, the more we offload, the more we go into a deficit. Cognitive offloading isn't new, though. Humans have always tried to write things down or create maps or create easier ways to find pieces of information. But what's new is that the scale and intensity of this is actually hurting us, not helping us. One study in Nature Human Behavior found that people using Google to look up pieces of information are significantly less likely to remember it, but significantly more likely to overestimate their knowledge. So basically, what's happening is that we have this illusion of information and knowledge, but really, we have nothing at all. We just know where to find it, and our brain kind of confuses the two things. And I don't have to tell you, this has massive implications for our metacognitions. To think about what we're thinking or have thought about, we overestimate how much knowledge we have. And maybe that makes us not seek out more knowledge. Maybe that makes us feel a little bit more confident doing something or going into something until we realize we actually don't know what we think we know or just can't remember it. But another problem with just remembering where to find the information rather than the information itself is that that raw material that we have, that storage, because what is knowledge? It's the stored information that we keep in our brains. And that we use to reflect on the world, to evaluate new pieces of information, to make associations, to build on it, even for creativity and imagination. It starts somewhere with that foundational piece of knowledge or information. But that foundation is eroding. We don't have that anymore. And so we are losing our ability to really reflect on new pieces of information or evaluate them. And also, we're losing our ability to think very creatively or with great imagination because that store of information is decreasing. And so every time you choose that easy path, like having ChatGPT write that email or having YouTube recommend your next video, your executive function takes a back seat. Again, if you don't use it, you lose it. And so if you're never really engaging your frontal lobe or your higher level thinking, you are never really engaging with something meaningfully. And a distracted mind is, or The Distracted Mind is a book that argues that this digital age is hijacking our frontal lobe. And without that frontal lobe, we're basically just always responding. We're not planning or active agents in our behaviors. We're just responding to stimuli like knee jerk reactions, which is pretty scary. It's really hard to talk about memory without talking about our fractured attention, which is why I recommended you watch part one of this. Because to commit something, to encode something in your long term memory, you need to be able to focus on it and give it attention for long enough, like an elongated period of time of working with it. Let's say a car is passing by and you're trying to remember the license plate. If you just quickly scan it and go and focus on the next thing, you're not going to encode that into long term memory. You have to maybe repeat it, write it down, see it multiple times, sit with it in order for your brain to actually hold on to that piece of information. And what's happening is that because we're so fragmented and scattered all over the place, we're never really committing anything to long term memory. And because of transactive memory, which we just covered. What's really interesting is that there was this one study from the University of Texas in 2021 that said your phone just existing around you, face down, silenced, turned off, just existing next to you, has measurable consequences on your working memory and ability to focus. And that's because just the anticipation of something being on there is distracting your brain because your brain is wondering, is there someone who texted me? Am I missing a notification? Is it going to buzz? Did I miss something important maybe? Oh, I'm bored. Maybe I can just grab it. No, actually, let me focus. All of that is cognitive work. It's work that your brain has to put in that's distracting it from being able to focus on anything else or commit anything else to memory. And what's really difficult about this whole debacle is that we want to slow down. We really do. A lot of people really do want to slow down. And you're seeing a rise in self help books and influencers talking about the art of slowing down and romanticizing it as if it's something so new and novel. But really, what's happening is that when we train our brains, this is like hedonic adaptation, right? Like when you experience something amazing and then shortly after your brain returns to baseline, you're going to constantly seek that out and it's going to become harder and harder each time. But we've gotten so used to this fast paced environment where everything is happening and you have to switch from one thing to another, not giving anything attention, not encoding anything in long term memory because you're not sitting with it long enough. The problem with that is that when you're overstimulated like this, everything else becomes unbearably slow. So the solutions, which you might think, hey, maybe I should take a walk, maybe I should just shower without music, or take a walk without a podcast, or go to the gym without rock music blasting in my ears. It is unbearable. Your brain is like freaking out. And this is kind of like withdrawal symptoms where you have to do it for longer and more for it to ease. But the thing is, it's so hard to come out of because once you're in it and your world internally and externally is moving so quickly, slow things start to become really uncomfortable. Sitting with your thoughts becomes unimaginable. I can't tell you how many people I've sat down with in my lifetime, not in my lifetime, but like in the past couple of years, who are really incapable of sitting down with their thoughts for an elongated period of time, like half an hour or an hour. There's no way. It's unimaginable. I like to watch people on planes because very rarely do you find someone who is awake and just doing nothing. You don't see people doing nothing. They're either on their phone or on their phone and watching a movie or eating along with all the other things. And it's very rare to find someone who can just sit still. And that's a real big problem for our cognitive capacity because the more overstimulated, the faster we go with life. We just skim and skim and skim everything until nothing means anything anymore. We feel burnt out and overstimulated and ill, and we don't really use our brain anymore, and so it dulls, it atrophies. Which brings me to my next point, which is emotional erosion. So we're not just eroding our neural pathways in terms of attention, memory, and thinking, but we're also eroding it in terms of feeling. One study out of the University of Virginia found that people would rather administer themselves an electric shock, feel pain, rather than sit with themselves for just 10 minutes in silence. That becomes an existential question, does it not? Because at the end of the day, we're stuck in a loop of numbness and trying to seek out anything other than numbness. We feel really burnt out and numb and exhausted, so we try to seek out content or something that'll make us laugh or cry or remember an ex, anything but what we are feeling. But in doing that, we are rendering ourselves even more numb, overstimulated, and overburdened with information. So, between part one and the very short conversation we had about memory today, this all seems a little bit sad and cynical. But there are things we can do to fix this, or at least mitigate the effects of it, maybe. Not expedite the process of brain shrinkage and devolving into cavemen. There are things we can do, so let's talk about that. First and foremost, deliberate monotasking. I know, such a strange concept to do one thing at once. But here's the thing, multitasking can actually reduce your efficiency, if you will. You're not a machine, you're not a machine, but it can reduce your productivity. There we go, better word, by up to 40%, if not more, if you have additional distractions around you. So try to focus on one task at a time and actually try to leave your phone somewhere very far away from you, like not on the table next to you, maybe in a different room. If you're working from home, or let's say you're working in an office, you can put it in your bag somewhere inaccessible, because one, you're into the habit of checking your phone, like picking it up even when you don't know you're picking it up, so that will, having to go get it will engage your prefrontal cortex, which gives you the chance to actually resist that urge instead of just following through with it like an animal. And secondly, monotasking will, one, bring back your ability to bear the boredom of focusing on one thing and give you the ability to actually give your focus and attention to that thing, increasing your ability to memorize it, remember it, make use of it, have that thought transform into other things, use it as inspiration for creativity and imagination, etc. Another thing to do is use analog tools. So a lot of people nowadays use apps for everything, whether they be calendars or note taking or checking the time. But the cool thing is that if you just use simple tools like notebooks or watches or calendars, like physical calendars, you actually reduce your cognitive load. These things are really helpful because it gives your brain a rest from the digital world and it grounds you a little bit. Also, these tactile experiences activate more parts of your brain, helping you really engage with the task or thing you're doing more deeply. Engage in long form content. And that can even be film. It doesn't have to be sitting down and reading a book, though deep immersive reading is one of the best things you can do for critical thinking, cognition, memory, everything, pretty much everything, attention. Deep immersive reading, if you can sit down and try to read reflectively and actually think about the pieces of information you're getting, like every now and again, maybe every 3, 4 sentences, take a slow pause and think about what that means for you or how you can apply that to your life or how that does apply to different aspects of life, that can be amazing for your brain. But if you can't do that, just engaging in long form content without any distraction may work just as well. Like watching a film, for example, and not touching your phone, not eating, not doing anything. Maybe like knitting or something mindless that you can do with your hands. But watching a film in its entirety without getting up and without doing anything else can bring back that tolerance for boredom in the scenes that aren't very action packed, for attentiveness for something longer than a notification or longer than a TikTok, and actually give you the ability to like reflect in those down moments of the film. Not like the new movies, because that's a whole other conversation. But actually, I was watching a podcaster talk about something similar, and she was talking about how film is ruined. Movies are ruined because now the directors don't trust you to read between the lines. They don't trust you to sit well with the ambiguity of it all because they know you're going to be on your phone for half the time or distracted. And so they have to give you the piece of information clearly, redundantly, and just in your face. And that's why like art has lost its flavor. Life has lost its flavor. Everything is so in your face. And we've all just lost the ability to appreciate the art of not knowing or waiting to know. And so engage in long form content. Another thing I do, and this might sound kind of strange, is that every night before I sleep, I doom scroll. But on days I feel like I could control my actions, I put my phone away, I close my eyes, and I try to retrace my steps for that day. Not in like a weird overthinking my conversations, although that does happen, but in an actual what did I do today? I woke up at what time? What did I do after that? What tasks did I complete? What conversations did I have? Don't really think about them deeply, but just retrace what happened in my day. One, that allows me to reflect on my day. What would I do differently tomorrow? Was it productive? What did I feel? But two, it helps me encode that day into my long term memory. And so I no longer feel like days or weeks or months are just passing me by, which honestly I do struggle with a lot. I find myself really forgetting huge chunks of time for all the reasons we talked about, but this has helped me a lot. And I know I say this all the time, but I can't help it. We need to eat better and sleep better. I know that sounds super privileged because not everybody has the access. I say this every time. I know it is a privilege to be able to access healthy food and environments where we can exercise and be physically active. But if you do have access, fiber rich foods and healthy whole foods in general, not processed foods, do help with memory and attention. Actually, people with ADHD, if they increase omegas in their diet, for example, they do see very positive impacts on attention and focus. So make sure you're eating a variety of nutrient rich foods, foods that are real, not from a package. None of that protein bar, skinny, low fat, low sugar. Just eat a vegetable and fruit and meat. It's really that simple. Try to move your body, especially early in the morning. It will like activate your brain for you, activate your body. Really helps with remembering things. I remember when I was in university, the days that I would go and exercise before classes and go to class, I was so much more attentive and I just never had to study after that. I would just remember it. I'm not sure that's how it works for everybody, but it really does help for everybody. That's a true statement. Exercise is really good. And sleep. Sleep is when you're asleep, your brain literally flushes out neurotoxins, it cleans itself. And so don't sleep on sleep. You need to sleep well for enough hours and deep sleep. So try to avoid drinking, try to avoid things like excessive screen time or TV before bed, etc., etc. You know the drill. Try to live a little bit healthier, and I promise your brain will feel a little bit less broken. But your brain isn't broken and you aren't broken. Again, you're just reacting very normally to the society around us, to what is happening around us. And it can get better and it will get better if we decide to take control of our life and our memory and our attention. Okay, that's all I had for you today. This was a bit of a shorter episode because it's just building on a conversation we already had. So go watch part one and then tell me what you think on either of these videos. What surprised you? What didn't surprise you? What are some of your experiences? What do you want to hear next? Do you like this channel? Do you have any suggestions for me changing it? Do you like Luna sleeping here? I'm not going to take Luna away, even if you don't. Um, Let me know. Talk to me. I am very open to conversations. You can either message me and it'll come to my email, or you can comment down below and I will be sure to respond. As always, stay happy, stay healthy, and I will see you next time here on this channel.